topic today is about LinkedIn advertising. And the things that if you don't already know about LinkedIn ads, you should know that number one, the targeting is incredible. That is the reason that we come to the platform and the reason why we pay such premium prices for it. But premium prices are the biggest con. This is like, an average of $8 to $13 per click is what most advertisers are paying. So it's extremely expensive, meaning that if you don't know what you're doing, you'll get punished very quickly by those costs. So as we go through, my goal is to help you really minimize those risks and take advantage of the platform for what it really is, which is the best B2B targeting that you can get anywhere. Virgil gave me a fantastic intro. Like he said, I live in the state of Utah. I've got 4 awesome kids. I fell in love with business to business marketing about 11 years ago. And back in 2014 is when I started B2 Linked. And we're an ad agency that LinkedIn ads is literally all we do. I like to say we're one-trick ponies and proud of it. So if you're already running or already very knowledgeable about the other platforms, let's say Google and Facebook, the talk triggers that I want you to be paying attention for to consider whether LinkedIn ads might be a good fit is like, if you're running Google and or Facebook and your sales team is telling you things like, the lead quality isn't very high. Can we get more of the right people into the funnel? How can we increase our volume there? Volume is also a big key here because with a platform like search, you can really only capture as many people who are searching for your keywords. Whereas something like LinkedIn, we can get our ads in front of everyone who fits a particular demographic, meaning that we can get a lot more traffic than you could from search. Facebook's also not very good at reaching like a wide, I'll say this, it's not very good at reaching the wide swath of who your ideal target audience is. Facebook is very good at finding people, but it doesn't know very much about you from a business context. So LinkedIn is really, really good at that. So listen for those problems, either number one, poor lead quality, and number two, challenges in scalability to your ideal target audience. There are some fantastic things about LinkedIn. Number one, we've talked about is the targeting and the fact that this targeting is available at near unlimited scale. It is extremely rare when someone comes to us with more of a budget than they're able to spend on LinkedIn. You might think, oh, it's a 3rd-tier platform. People don't spend time there, but they definitely do. And your ideal target is there and they are clicking on ads. We also know that on LinkedIn, us users, we tend to keep the platform up to date with our most recent credentials. I joke that LinkedIn is the second person that I tell after or about a job promotion or something after a significant other. We know that because of that, when all the data is super up to date and correct, more than it would be on any other platform, because it's a representation of your professional self, that advertisers really enjoy that because they're not wasting a bunch of money on impressions to someone who used to have that job title 6 months ago. Also, when someone is on the platform, they are thinking about their job, they're thinking about their career, they're thinking about their goals. So when you give them an offer or show them products that help augment them in those areas, they're a lot more likely to pay attention. So we tend to see higher conversion rates. And finally, across all of the different platforms, we've run this study multiple times to try to figure out which platform contributes to which kinds of deals. And inevitably, LinkedIn always closes the largest deal sizes, which is fantastic. It just shows you, it's one more way of reaffirming that this is the platform that lets you get in front of the exact right people that you want to get in front of. If you don't care about deal size, if you more care about speed to close a deal, Google Ads always wins that one. So because the cost is high on LinkedIn, we have to wonder, okay, who's a good fit? Who has LinkedIn priced out of the market and who should be using the platform? So I've figured out 3 segments that tend to work really, really well. So the first and very largest is business to business. It really can be any kind of lead gen, but it's mostly business to business lead gen. It's lead generation where your lifetime value of a customer is $15,000 or more. And it's because the cost per click on LinkedIn is higher, which means in order to get a return on your investment, you have to have a larger payout at the end. So you don't want to use LinkedIn for something like e-commerce selling $80 handbags. You wouldn't be able to turn a profit on that, but you would if you're selling, let's say, SaaS software that's $1,500 a month and contract length is, a year and a half or something like that. You're able to definitely recoup that money. We also see that in recruiting, it tends to work very, very well. It has been a very tough recruiting time for the last probably year and a half. So a lot of people have turned to LinkedIn to try to get in front of people who they want to be their employees. And they're very receptive to it because when people are on LinkedIn, oftentimes they're open to new opportunities. And then finally, and probably really interesting to this crowd, is that it works really, really well for recruiting into higher ed. So we've had a lot of MBA programs as clients who are trying to recruit students because we can do things like, if you have a bachelor degree, but you don't yet have a more advanced degree than that, and you studied X and Y, or you graduated from Z university, those are the types of filtering that you can do to show people ads. So let's jump into the kinds of ad formats that you'll see on LinkedIn. If you log into linkedin.com, either from the mobile app or on your desktop, just navigating to linkedin.com, you'll notice that the very first experience you see is your newsfeed. And so if you're running newsfeed ads, you're going to have a lot of people able to see that. This is where you'll get a lot of impressions and probably the highest quantity of your interactions and your clicks and your conversions. So it's a great place to start. Specifically, the single image format version of sponsored content, simply because it's the easiest to make work. All you need to do is have some text up above, some text down below, and then one big, beautiful image that's going to cover the whole screen pretty much on both desktop and mobile. It's very simple to create, still gets a lot of interaction and a lot of engagement. This is my favorite ad format just because of how easy it is and how versatile it is. I can pretty much describe any kind of offer in this format, and it's so easy. I can just pop into Canva, throw a quick image together, and be on my way. I recommend this for the vast majority of advertisers who are just starting out. I say 95% here. Probably 95% of the budget of our clients is going towards this one ad format. So it's fantastic. The next one I want to show you, though, is my second favorite, and these are called text ads. Now, text ads don't sound very awesome at first blush. They are only available in the right rail, which means you can't see it on mobile because on mobile, there's no right rail. So it's only on desktop. They also have a really, really low click-through rate, like 0.025% is the average click-through rate here, which means 2.5 clicks out of every 10,000 times these ads are shown. So you're going, AJ, these, like, no one clicks on these things. No one sees them. Why are they so valuable? Well, number one, they are LinkedIn's cheapest ad format. I showed you the other ones. You'll pay on average like $8 to $13 per click. These ones, you'll oftentimes pay $3 to $5 per click, and you can pay all the way down to $2 per click if they're getting clicked on enough. So they're very inexpensive. And because they have such a low click-through rate, it means they're showing a lot of impressions. So what we've found is when we're running those single image ads alongside these text ads, we'll usually see a lift of about 13% in our click-through rates on the sponsored content. And the way that we understand that is, people are seeing these text ads on every page they visit on desktop. And so they're seeing your logo over and over and over. And it may even be subliminal, but by the time they see your sponsored content ad, they go, oh, like, I've seen this company before. They must be legit. Like, yeah, I'm interested in what they're showing me. So it can be a really, really good way to help reinforce your brand. They're very, very low risk. This is my second favorite ad format. Then you've got dynamic ads. Dynamic ads used to be incredibly expensive. They are also in the right rail, only on desktop, and they used to be priced at around $15 per click. And so I was like, I don't understand why anyone would use these things. They don't get clicked on much, and they're more expensive than sponsored content. But since then, they've lowered the price, and they lowered them a little more than half. So oftentimes you'll end up paying like $6 to $8 per click, which is a little bit cheaper than sponsored content. So if you are running all sponsored content and then you've added text ads and you still have additional budget, this is where I would overflow into, are these dynamic ads. They're called dynamic because they take the prospect's picture and stick it into the ad. And so I also call these LinkedIn's creepiest ad format, because every once in a while a client will say, why is LinkedIn using my picture in an ad? It's like, well, no one else is seeing that. It's only you. But they don't maybe immediately know that. Then they have a class of ads called sponsored messaging. And there's two different kinds of sponsored messaging. What they have in common is the price. You'll oftentimes pay like 35 cents to 65 cents per person that you send this to. And the other commonality is that they both show up in your LinkedIn messaging box. So right when you go in to look at your chats, your messages, your in-mails, whatever you call them, one of these could show up. They're also pretty special because once you've sent it to someone, they're ineligible to see another ad from any advertiser, not just you, for 30 days. So you kind of own their inbox for that amount of time. The first variation here is called message ads, and it's very much like an email or an in-mail. You put a message in their box, and if they want to respond, they can click a link. Otherwise, they just kind of go, okay, I'm not interested, and move on to their next message. So I call these LinkedIn's most expensive ads. And it's because, and if you're inside of LinkedIn running these ads, you probably won't realize that they're so expensive, because LinkedIn calls, whenever someone opens the message, they call that a click. So you'll see like a 55% click-through rate and like a $1.10 cost per click. And that sounds really good until you realize, no, those are just cost per open and your open rate. When you look at your actual cost per click, you're looking at 55% of people will open the message, and then only about 3.2% of people will click. And so you actually end up with like a $23 to a $58 cost per click, which is very, very high. That being said, these are expensive on average, but if you have an offer that feels very special, very VIP, very much like a personal invitation, these can perform much better than the average. We've seen cases where you can get the cost per click on these down to $2 or $3 because you have an offer that really feels special and makes people, kind of fluffs their ego up a little bit. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'm interested in this. It seems like a cool opportunity. So this is not what I would use for something like, hey, download my white paper or come and join my webinar. It's got to be for more special stuff. Like, we want to invite you to this event we're putting on, or we want to give you early access or a sneak peek at something really cool. The other variation of message ads, of sponsored messaging, are called conversation ads. And these are new. It comes the same way into your message box, but you can give them, it's kind of like a multiple choice or a choose your own adventure kind of experience. You get to set questions, and then based off of what they respond with, you get to give them other questions. So imagine something like, hey, are you going to this big industry event, next month? And if they say yes, you go, great, we've got a booth. Come by and get some swag, and we'd love to talk to you. And if they say no, you can say, well, come, sign up and for this webinar that we're going to put on after the event to learn what we learned there. We're going to help share with you and help you keep top of your industry. So those are the kinds of things you can do here. Because you can give multiple calls to action, these tend to be about 30% more efficient than message ads. So they're great. They take a long time to build. When my team builds a message ad, we can usually build one about every 5 minutes. With these conversation ads, it's usually about one every 35 minutes. So they are pretty cumbersome. Then as part of the sponsored content, the newsfeed ads, there is a video ad variation. And what's so interesting about video ads is I don't really have an explanation for why this is, but we tend to see the costs being about 20% more than just single image. So if you have good video creative that's let's say it's already battle tested on YouTube and Facebook, then it could be worth running on LinkedIn. But if you're just testing into video, I would start with single image just because it's cheaper, and then test into video. I understand that 30 seconds of watching me on a video is going to make you warmer and much more likely to know, like, and trust me than reading 5 of my white papers. So video is very, very important. Just realize that because of the way that LinkedIn prices them, they can be a little bit more expensive. They, just like Facebook, they do play muted. And so plan on 80% or more of your audience watching without the sound on. So make sure you have subtitles. Make sure that it's easy and compelling to watch, especially in that first 2 seconds. There needs to be action. Don't let your first 2 seconds just be fading from black. You'll lose everyone. And you pay by the view, so you'll end up paying for a whole bunch of people who didn't even watch. We can also retarget people using these ad formats. So anyone who's watched at least 25% of a video ad, you can add to a retargeting audience for later, which is really cool. Then you have carousel ads. I don't know why these get used. I know LinkedIn copied this from Facebook. I'm sure they wanted feature parity, but they are just like video ads. They tend to be about 20% more expensive than static image sponsored content. They're also harder to build. It's like building multiple ads inside of a single ad, and there's no performance increase. We don't hardly ever see higher click-through rates or lower costs per click when we use these ad formats. So I just say, unless you have a really specific need for having multiple images in an ad, just ignore these altogether. You do way better with sponsored content, the single image type. One of the biggest problems that LinkedIn had for years and years is that advertisers would come on the platform, they'd send traffic to their website or their landing page and go, man, we didn't get any conversions. Your platform is super low quality. And LinkedIn's like, wait, we didn't have control over that landing page experience. So what they did is they implemented what Facebook has as lead ads. YouTube has this now too. LinkedIn's had this, I think, since 2019, maybe 2018, and they call them lead gen form ads. And what it is when you attach this to any of the ad formats that are in the news feed or in the message box, when you interact with the ad, instead of taking you off the website, a little drawer will slide down with a form in there. And the cool parts about this is it loads instantly because it already loaded on page load on LinkedIn. It's all in the code, so they don't have to wait. And we see that a lot with sending traffic to a landing page. If it takes more than 2 or 3 seconds for the page to fully load, people will just bounce. They're like, I don't have time for this ad. But if it loads fast, they will. So these lead gen forms, they load immediately. Plus the experience is staying on LinkedIn.com, where people already have a great amount of trust and an appreciation for the platform. So they're much more likely to fill out the form. Then it goes a step further. LinkedIn, anything that they know about you from your personal profile, they will pre-fill all of those fields. So all you have to do is just click submit, especially good on mobile when you're like, oh, I don't want to type out all my information. That seems like it's adding a lot of friction. If it's all pre-filled and all you have to do is hit submit, long story short, these will convert sometimes 2-3 times higher than a landing page. Of course, there is always value in having traffic on your website that you own. But if all you're looking for is just the cheapest cost per lead, using these lead forms is awesome. Of course, once LinkedIn has this information, you need to somehow get it into your CRM or your marketing automation system, or somehow get it to the sales team so they can start following up on these. So they do have some integrations. You can go and download the leads manually, but that's really annoying to do. So if you happen to have HubSpot, Eloqua, Marketo, Salesforce, probably Microsoft Dynamics, since Microsoft owns them, but I haven't had a client use that yet. If you have any of those, there's a direct integration where all of the lead forms just deposit right into your system. If you don't happen to have one of those though, the $20 per month series, the line of Zapier.com will let you basically put your leads wherever you want them. So it integrates with LinkedIn and it can fire them out as emails to your sales team or add them to a Google Sheet or whatever CRM you are using. So I highly recommend this, especially early on when you're just testing LinkedIn, because there's no there's no substitute for having like high conversion rates to let you know when one of your offers is working versus when it's not. All right, so now let's get to the sexy part of LinkedIn, which is the targeting. This is the reason why we come to the platform. And the vast majority of advertisers go right to job title targeting because it makes the most sense. But look at all these other options that we have. We can target by someone's department and the level of seniority that they have. We can target by the individual skills that they have listed on their profile or the names of the groups that they're members of. I know all of you who know Facebook ads out there are totally salivating because we wish we could do that with Facebook groups. On LinkedIn, we can. If you've gone and joined a group about social media marketing, I can advertise to you regardless of what your job title is. We can also target the types of companies that prospects work for. So what size of company, like the number of employees or their revenue or their growth rate. We can target what industry the company is part of. We can even target by individual company names. For all of you account-based marketing nerds out there, you'll really appreciate that, being able to target just specific companies. There's the education side of things that we care about in higher ed, especially the normal demographics you'd expect. And all of these that I've mentioned, it's probably only about 1/5 of all of the targeting options we have available. So it's worth getting in. It's free. Get in, get familiar with, like, build an account, play around with all the targeting options, see what's available, because there is so much. What I love is that you can add all of these things in combination with each other to make a really hyper targeted audience. So you could say something like, if your department is HR and your seniority is manager and above, and you're in the tech industry and you're in the Western United States at a company with at least 500 employees, then I want to show you these ads. And that can be incredibly powerful if you're trying to get to HR decision makers in tech, and you just can't get that targeting anywhere else. You can also use the vast majority of these targeting options as exclusions. So I'll give you an example of why you might want to exclude someone. So let's say you're targeting marketers for whatever reason, and you know that your competitors' marketing departments are probably watching what you're doing, and they would happily click on your ads if they saw them. So what you can do is add all of your competitors' company names as exclusion targeting. And now all of a sudden, even if they would fit in your ideal target, they're just not being served your ads. And so your competitors aren't going to be charging you money by clicking on your ads. It's a beautiful thing. Those exclusions can be used in a lot of different ways, but that's my favorite. So let's talk about the type of offer that you're using to get someone's attention. And when I say offer, I don't mean like, here's a percentage off, buy now. I mean, whatever you are offering your prospect in exchange for their information. On LinkedIn, I mean, with any ad platform, you can ask anything you want of someone. And so there's going to be a lot of people who say, well, hey, let's just ask someone to talk to sales right now, or try a trial of our software, or buy something. And the fact of the matter is, when you're showing ads on LinkedIn, most of the time people haven't heard of you before. They're totally cold audiences, and cold audiences, unless they're absolutely desperate for what it is that you're doing because you're a total market disruptor and everyone's been waiting for you, which isn't the case for most people, then they're not going to be willing to take that kind of a friction-prone step to getting to know you. On the other hand, you don't want to go totally to the opposite end, which is like, hey, just come read this blog post or come look at this infographic. Because especially to start out with, this is all great for demand generation later, but just to start out with, you're going to find that blog posts don't convert at a really high rate. And because LinkedIn's costs are so high up front, you're going to end up with like a $500 to $1,000 cost per lead. And at some point, someone's going to, like, if it's your boss or the board or the CEO or someone, is going to have a problem with that cost per lead. But if you can shoot for somewhere in between where you're giving a lot of helpful information and you're asking for them to fill out a form in exchange for it, we'll call it lead magnets or gated content. Those types of offers tend to work really well to get information on your prospects and then be able to start nurturing those relationships afterwards. The types of offers that tend to work really well here are like, download this free guide or cheat sheet or checklist, or join this free webinar, come to this free in-person event. Those types of things tend to work really, really well. So when you go to actually create ads, I want to teach you the things to avoid and the things to definitely do if you can. What I want you to understand about LinkedIn is that it's a place where people aren't necessarily coming to be entertained. They're usually on a mission. They have something in mind that they want to do. And so for that reason, you want to keep things short and to the point. You don't want your ads to tell a big flowery story and hope that someone is willing to just keep reading because they're bored. These are busy people. These are highly compensated people who have a lot on their plates. So get out the value proposition to them as fast as you can. I like to use the acronym WIIFM. I call it everyone's favorite radio station. It stands for what's in it for me. So you as a marketer, you're going to want to explain very quickly what's in it for the prospect, not what's in it for you as the marketer. Of course, you want all the money that someone's willing to give, but put it in their perspective. How does this solve their pain points? How does this satisfy their curiosities? If they have a bleeding neck problem that's really, really severe, like show them how you can solve that very quickly. And don't be afraid to use a strong call to action. Tell them exactly what you want them to do. Don't leave it up to chance. If you tell them like, download the white paper now, sign up on the wait list. I mean, whatever your call to action is, don't be afraid to say it right up front. Also, the imagery on the other networks tends to be the most important part. On LinkedIn, it's not the most important part of getting someone to click, but it is crucial at getting someone to stop scrolling so that they read your ad copy. So what we've found is, LinkedIn's whole color palette is very like blue, gray, and white. And if you look on the color wheel at where blue is, if you look at opposite, that's the color that's going to pop more and get someone's attention. That happens to be orange. So if you can, in your imagery, use lots of oranges, reds, purples, greens, anything that stands out, and it's going to be a lot more likely that they'll stop scrolling, look at your ad copy, and actually read what you've so dedicatedly written. Same thing with video. Like if your video is playing, if it happens to be saturated in those colors that help it stand out, all the better. Remember that, like, even though it's not like Facebook where we're going to get penalized but for using too many words in the imagery, there's nothing like that. You can put as many words as you want, but I would highly recommend follow the billboard rule, which is 7 or fewer words in an image ad. Because if there's more than that, someone actually has to concentrate to read it. But if there's less than 7, just like on a billboard on the freeway, someone doesn't have to actually look at it to get the gist of what it's doing, and you'll get their attention a lot easier. Here's a good example. There's a local company here in Utah called Inside Sales, or Zant, and they had a really cool offer. They were showing this to senior executives in sales at the Fortune 500. So these are very busy, very highly compensated people. And yet this ad was converting like 45%. It was incredible. It worked very well, both on a landing page and using these lead generation forms. So this is a good model to follow. You want your intro, and this is the B2 linked model of the way of building an ad that we've found that generally gets 2 to 3 times the engagement than like the normal average LinkedIn ad. So this intro copy at the beginning, you want it to contain 2 things. Number 1, why they should pay attention. So grab their attention with some kind of a hook, show the value. And then number 2, include your call to action there. The headline down below, this one's a little bit shorter. It's the same length as a title tag for SEO. So for this one, I like to include 2 things if I can. Within square brackets, I'll say what type of asset it is. So this one says download, but it could be free infographic, free webinar, free cheat sheet, something like that. And then include the title of the asset, because you or your marketing department have probably already put a lot of thought into like the name of your asset. So take advantage of that here. And then of course, like we said with the image, try to make it stand out. If it looks very organic, like this one does, it's going to get more eyeballs than if it looks like it was designed by a marketing department. But test all kinds of different things out. I just realized he has a maraca on his desk. I don't know why you'd bring a maraca to work. Oh well. Okay. For anyone who has not yet advertised on LinkedIn, I've advertised on so many different networks, and every time I'm disappointed when I go try to launch ads and I realize there's something I didn't know and it's taking longer than I thought, and ads aren't going to get launched till tomorrow. So for that reason, we released, it's the 8-step checklist for how to get ads launched today. It's the resource that I wish I would have had when I first got started on LinkedIn or any network, and I wanted to give it out free to you. So if any of you go to b2linked.com/checklist, you'll get the same onboarding checklist that our clients get for everything that you need to get launched. Also, if you are a podcast listener and you like getting, like, if the level of geeky that we're talking here, and if you want to get even geekier about LinkedIn ads, go check out the LinkedIn ads podcast or the LinkedIn ads show. We go really, really deep into it. It's a masterclass is what it is. It's the same way that I train my team of account managers and LinkedIn ads experts, and it's all totally free. So get that if that is up your alley. Okay, with that being said, we can pop over to Q&A. I would absolutely love to hear all of your questions, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you, AJ. That was excellent. We had a few questions come in, and we'll start going through those while we wait for some more questions to come in from the chat. The first one is, since the cost is higher, what is the best way to test your ads before putting a ton of budget into your campaign? And how do you determine early if your ads are worth a larger investment?
Oh, okay. I love this question. I have a lot of thoughts in a lot of different directions here. What you could do is test your offer and even your ad copy by just posting it to your company page on LinkedIn or sharing it personally from LinkedIn and see how many people like, comment, share, and otherwise engage with that ad. So that could be a clue as to how attractive your ad is. That being said, the audience who's already connected to you on LinkedIn is oftentimes not your total ideal target audience. So you might try something out organically, like with your own network, and maybe it doesn't perform super well. But if you showed that to your ideal target audience, it maybe solves their pain points more, and they might. I think the way that I would approach it, especially if you have a decent budget for advertising, is go ahead and use the platform. Start by bidding low. And when I say low, like LinkedIn will tell you your recommended range is $13 to $28 per click. Ignore the 13. That doesn't mean that's the floor bid. That means it's the lowest that they recommend. Put the bid down to like $1 and see what happens. They'll pop up a little red message that says like, oh, for this audience, you can't pay less than $5.55 or something like that. That's what your floor bid actually is. So if you're just testing it out, start by putting the very floor bid and just see, because the worst case scenario is that you're not bidding aggressively to get LinkedIn to show your ad to anyone. And so you just don't spend anything. And you can always go in and incrementally increase that bid. So start out with it. Start by just doing your very best with good ad copy and a good offer and a form that's probably not asking for too much information, just to see what your conversion rate looks like. And if it's attractive, if it's around the cost per lead that you can take, then you can keep scaling up and spending past there. Virgil, what was the second half of that question?
It was how to determine early if your ads are worth a larger investment, which I think you answered at the end there, based on what your acquisition cost is, and then scaling up.
Yeah, perfect.
So you talked about the LinkedIn message ads being similar to email. Would you recommend taking your best performing emails and turning them into LinkedIn message ads?
Probably that might be like my third or fourth test that I do on the platform. If they're really high performing emails and the offer fits really well as like a personal invitation, then sure, it's good for it. But I would definitely test like single image sponsored content, max that out, do your text ads, max that out before I ever considered like even testing into the message ads for most.
Facebook pretty much allows one to sell anything. Does LinkedIn have more restrictions than Facebook with respect to what you can advertise, or what restrictions are there around advertising on LinkedIn?
It's funny, Facebook, we get so many clients who have been advertising heavily on Facebook, and they come to us and say, Facebook shut our account down and we have no idea why. So we're trying to diversify channels. So from my experience, Facebook is really quick to shut people down for all kinds of different things. LinkedIn is quite a bit more lenient, but they do have industries that you're not allowed to advertise for. Like you're not allowed to advertise for wine or pharmaceuticals, alcohol, drugs of any kind. They also don't like cryptocurrency or anything related to crypto. Pretty much, we're trying to get around that by doing things like don't use the word ICO or don't use the word crypto, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and nothing related to gambling you can't do. So it's a little bit restrictive, but not nearly as much as Facebook.
I see. Given the expanding opportunities for ads on LinkedIn, are you at all concerned about the image of the platform itself, perhaps becoming a bit less desirable professionally due to increase in advertising and commercialism there?
Okay, such a good question. Originally, this is why LinkedIn ads are so expensive compared to Facebook. When Facebook first started, they would take anyone. And so you'd see those belly fat ads and other like really low quality types of ads. And LinkedIn said from the very beginning, we don't want to be associated with low quality ads. And so they set their minimum cost per click at $2, which was extremely high because at the time you could get traffic from Google for less than $1. You could get traffic from Facebook for less than 1 cent. And so LinkedIn has always been really expensive compared to everything else in its classification. And the costs have only risen since then. So in my estimation, because they've kept the costs so high, it tends to only be high quality advertisers. Because if you're not high quality, there's not like a huge opportunity to make a killing overnight and like cut and run. So I don't see that as being an issue. That being said, I do see the potential of, how Facebook, I think, used to show it one ad every 10 items in the news feed. And then it was 8, and then it was 1 every 5, and then it was every 4 or every 3. And it really turns people off. I could see LinkedIn getting greedy at some point and saying, hey, let's show more ads here, create more ad inventory and try to squeeze more out of our users. But they haven't been doing that very much. They tend to be really conservative on like user behavior. Like they rolled out a change recently on LinkedIn's campaign manager, and then 5 days later rolled it back. And I was like, why did you do that? And they said, well, we noticed that fewer people were implementing the conversion tracking with this new experience. We don't know why, but we very quickly rolled it back. So they do care about user behavior, and they really care about their members.
Awesome. Kind of in the same vein, do you have any predictions for what is going to change over the next few years? And with that, do you think costs will go up or down over the next few years or stay about the same?
Yeah, I see costs continuing to rise. I didn't think anyone would ever be willing to pay like $15 to $20 a click, but marketers are getting more technical and better at weaving together the costs of the advertising into the quality of lead and into the CRM. And so we're now able to definitively say, yes, this is working well, and it's worth a higher investment. But I see the costs continuing to rise. I'm not very happy about that. That being said, feature-wise, you can pretty much look at Facebook now and say that's probably what LinkedIn is going for in terms of features and parity within probably the next 4 years. So that's what I see. It's like every new cool feature that Facebook comes out with, I expect LinkedIn to have it within 4 years.
Awesome. So we have one more question here, and then Sherry has her hand raised, and we'll get her question. So the question I have here is, what is your recommended budget for a company to spend on LinkedIn, and what is the recommended deal size for a company to be successful? I'm not sure. I'm sure it depends, but just budgeting generally. Go ahead.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So I don't recommend advertising on LinkedIn with under a $5,000 a month budget, especially if you're targeting North America. That being said, you definitely can advertise for less than that. You just have to keep in mind that that's about the threshold where your A/B tests start to become statistically significant down to the conversion rate, which is, I think, where you want to be. So if you are spending less, let's say you're spending $2,000 or $3,000 a month, you just have to make sure that you're patient enough to wait and look at your leads over the course of 2-3 months in order to know for sure, like, yes, this is working. Excuse me. Yes, this is working, or no, this sucks. I should quit immediately. But if you have that $5,000 a month budget, generally every month you'll get statistically significant data, and you'll know very quickly if things are working. For deal size, I would recommend a deal size over 15K. We do have clients who make it work for less than that, but most of the time it's because they've been advertising for years and years and have really like super optimized their process, and they know how much they can expect to make off of them. And if you get your cost per sale down to like $1,000 and your lifetime value is 10, like you're still making a 10x ROI, which is great. But I would start out being conservative at around like, hope you have a lifetime value of over 15K to pretty much guarantee you a good return on your investment.
Awesome. So I'm going to unmute Sherry now and allow her to ask her question. Go ahead, Sherry.
Hi, AJ. This is Sherry Holmquist, and I teach at Minnesota State Community and Technical College. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you great.
Great. I'm probably using my teacher voice. So timely that I landed in your session, because over the last couple of days, the school made the decision to hire their first full-time digital marketing instructor.
Ooh.
And I hate to say it, but of course, higher education is like the dinosaur, right? And they have very traditional ways of promoting. And I loved what you had to say today. And I have a meeting next Tuesday. So what advice should I give our HR department in saying, okay, we're going to be hiring a digital marketing position. We have to use some other strategies. These people are digital. What would you, and I certainly think LinkedIn should be the focal point. Can you give me some advice that I should share with them?
Yeah, in recruiting, what I see way too much happening is people will have a job description that has like a job rec ID at the bottom, and it'll say you must be able to work in dimly lit environments and be able to lift 10 pounds. No one cares. Like that's great for a job, like a job rec. But when you're trying to attract attention from someone on LinkedIn because they already fit the mold, they already have the skills and the experience you're looking for.
Yeah.
I would try to send them to a landing page experience that makes the position feel fun and cool and cutting edge and show the benefits. So instead of that old classic job rec, I would send them to a page where maybe there's a video where you or someone else in the department is talking about like the internal culture of the university and how you push the limits and how you can help develop these professors and give them opportunities. Give them a good description of what they're doing. Basically treat it more like lead generation and less like recruiting. And you'll see a lot more applications come from that kind of experience because it feels cool because it is cool.
Yeah, and it's a cool position. They're in the digital field, and it was just so funny because I've been in emails swirling about this morning, and to try to get HR departments that need young, fresh ideas. There's a whole piece that's missing, but yeah, in higher education, that's a tough one. But I thank you for your advice.
Oh, anytime. I'm so glad that was so timely.
Yeah, I know. It was like, I had over lunch break, I had somebody calling me and we're going to meet with our dean. And I'm saying, we need to talk about modes of communication and up to date and all this. And then I landed and here it was like, oh, well, there's perfect timing. So AJ, thank you so much. You had some great advice today.
Oh, so welcome. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Sherry. A couple more questions that we had come in. So besides yourself, of course, what companies do you think are great at LinkedIn ads, and what examples could instructors share with their students to look at as like, here's a great example?
The challenge that I've found is that there aren't very many people who know how to do LinkedIn ads very well because the costs were high. It's kind of like, it's risky to get into. So most went to Google and Facebook first. And then if you know Facebook, LinkedIn is also audience targeting and everything's called the same thing. So you might be tempted to just take all the same strategies that you used on Facebook and bring them over into LinkedIn. That being said, some of the companies that I would recommend looking at to see what they're doing are RingDNA and Slack. RingDNA changed their name. And I think they might be called revenue.io now. You might have to Google it, but go look at their company pages, and you can actually click into their posts, and then there's a little tab that you can click called ads. You can actually look at the ads that these companies are running, and it's kind of hard to get to, but you can spy on their ads. Take a peek at what they're offering, and that'll give you some good ideas. There just aren't that many people who are sharing really good stuff about LinkedIn. But as I find them, I'll be happy to share them. Awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a great little assignment for students to go in and navigate and find where you can actually see a company's ads. That's a really cool feature I didn't know about. Another question here. Any other recommendations that you haven't mentioned that might help departments or colleges or universities who are considering using LinkedIn ads for grad student recruitment?
I mentioned here in the Q&A about the trick of bidding less than what LinkedIn says is the floor. So definitely try that when you're just tiptoeing into the platform to see if it works. The other thing is that when you are building a campaign, LinkedIn will have this box auto-checked that says enable audience expansion. You always want to uncheck that box, because what that's doing is it's giving carte blanche to LinkedIn to stick people who aren't in your target audience into it. And it always hurts your lead quality. It's not helpful, but LinkedIn thinks it is helpful. So always uncheck that box. I call that the COVID-19 of LinkedIn ads, and the Delta variant, not this like light Omicron stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions we have. I don't know if you saw in the chat, but Scott Cowley sent his love, gave you a shout out there. So
what's up,
Scott? So thank you so much for this session. It was very great. Lots of great engagement in the comments. I know I got a lot of value out of it myself personally, and I know there's a lot of value from our attendees. So thank you, AJ.
Hey, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.